Hi there, I'm Logan Medish, and this is High Caliber History. The Ulrich family of engravers is a sort of dynasty in the gun world, with members of the family working for Colt, Winchester, Marlin, and others. The first of the family to start engraving guns was John Ulrich, beginning in 1868, and the last was Alden, who stopped when he died in 1949. Conrad Friedrich Ulrich learned the trade of engraving under the renowned Gustav Jung, who was the master engraver for Colt in the early to mid-1860s. Conrad's brothers, John and Herman, later joined Conrad at Colt, and according to family tradition, they were taught the techniques of engraving by their older brother. Some of the most beautiful and expensive guns ever engraved bear the Ulrich name, and those done by Conrad F. Ulrich often bear his distinctive signature in the form of a stamp that says C.F. Ulrich in a rectangle. At first, it may seem odd that Conrad would stamp his name instead of actually engraving it, but when you consider the stamp itself, it becomes easy to see why he did it. For starters, the stamp measures just 5 millimeters wide and 1 millimeter tall, or just shy of 2/10 of an inch wide by 3/100 of an inch tall. Even more impressive is that Conrad himself made the stamp in 1867 by reversing the lettering and cutting away the material around the letters so that the stamp would present properly when used. When you look at it like that, it's much easier to see that the stamp was, in and of itself, a work of art, proof of a master and his craft. While guns signed by C.F. Ulrich are rare in their own right, there's actually another item with his signature that are actually more rare. Coins. Now, I've read that there were, at one point, 10 such coins that had Ulrich's stamp on them, but I've only been able to track down 3. An 1870 dated nickel, an 1869 dated penny, and this 1865 dated 3-cent piece. Now, obviously, these items are nowhere near as valuable as guns that have been engraved by Conrad, but by numbers, they're far more rare. Of course, another question is raised by the coins, and that is, why? Why would you bother to stamp the coins? Now, it could be that he was testing how the stamp was received in different metal compositions, or perhaps they were done as tokens for friends, or as what we would consider in the modern day kind of an Easter egg, and then send them out into circulation. Who knows? The truth is that we'll never know exactly why they were made. Conrad, Herman, and John all left Colt and moved to New Haven around 1869. The demand for engraving at Colt at that time was in the decline, and they left because there was more work for them in New Haven, primarily at the Winchester factory. John and Herman both appeared as engravers for Winchester, but Conrad was simply recorded as an engraver and not actually listed as an employee at Winchester. But he does, however, appear on the factory records and the company rolls at Marlin from 1895 to 1907. He worked for Marlin on a full-time basis, though he undoubtedly did work on the side as well. And he worked for Marlin primarily on the Ballard rifles initially and continued working there as late as World War I. Now, by this time, brothers Conrad, John, and Herman were all retired or semi-retired, and Conrad died on April 22, 1925. Despite their brothers' remarkable skills in engraving and stockwork, the Ulrichs themselves really just considered themselves to be shop hands and not engravers or artisans. Judging from the death notices published in New Haven and Hartford papers, this attitude was shared by their contemporaries. None of the engraving members of the family were properly eulogized in an obituary, and the death notices were brief and made no mention of their skills or accomplishments. And so, that brings us back around to the mysterious signed coins. For people such as myself, admirers of the Ulrich work, but unlikely to ever be able to afford the 6-figure masterpieces, the coins are, in my opinion, a close second. Sure, they're not engraved by the master, but he marked them in the same way. He held them in his hands and used the same tools that he used on those 6-figure guns. For me, that's about as good as it's going to get, especially since there are far fewer marked coins than there are guns. I'll just consider myself lucky to have handled a number of the guns and to own one of the coins. Thanks for tuning in to this episode of High Caliber History. I hope you enjoyed it and learned something, and I'll see you again on the next episode.